Expectation is something all of us go through at some point in our game lives. Whether it's a sequel, a new installment of a studio you're a fan of, or just an amazing and hype trailer, we all have been through it, innit? But then, sometimes, and lately it has been a lot of times, the expectations of players caused the games to be scrutinized, overly criticized, and in some cases fall victim to major hate online.
King boring!
But now that I have a YouTube channel talking about games, I was left thinking if some games' huge criticism is fair or not. So I decided to play in October 3 games that received big criticism from players and critics alike. The first game I decided to play looked like a fun open-world, narrative-focused zombie game with bikers. Woo!
Everybody's checking us out.
Yeah, they think we're pretty cool.
The reception of Days Gone in 2019 was divisive, to say the least. A lot of people criticized this game a lot for being too buggy and unfinished in the sense of optimization.
Oh shit!
Oh my f***ing god!
But the bigger red flag to me was the fact that a lot of people said that Days Gone is a bloated, boring, slow-paced, and that not a lot of things happens in the mission progression. And that was enough for me to wait up for a sale. And with an overall score of 71 on Metacritic and a respectful 8.4 on user ratings, I was somewhat cautious of the quality and fun this game was going to be able to offer me. So I started to play it for a couple of days and got kind of tired of it and was not really clicking with me. I cannot put my finger on exactly what it was, but it felt like something was off. Maybe it was the writing that was not really connecting with me. Like the best instance of such was the initial cutscene that was supposed to have this big emotional impact on player that shaped Deacon's trauma and personality throughout the game.
I've been through worse shit than this before.
To be honest, the writing in this game is not the best. Some dialogues are corny and have an off vibe, like the characters don't act and talk like real people at times.
But only if you promise to ride me as much as you ride your bike.
But there's also an issue that a big part of the game, the narrative, feels aimless and pointless at times, to the degree that makes a lot of missions feels like a chore rather than having a bigger purpose behind it. And that can be a big turn off for people.
Hey, this is not cool.
But I was obstinate to finish this game. I pushed through a couple of hours and then it clicked. At about 15 hours or so, the game clicked for me. I was enjoying riding through the map, going through missions and enjoying somewhat the story. Mind you, the story is not the Last of Us caliber, but it was good enough to entertain me between gameplay. The writing issues I said earlier are present throughout the game, but as the story picks up, it gets better with some interesting plot points here and there.
2 people walked out of this town after all was said and done. Some days, I wish to hell one of them wasn't me.
The major gameplay selling points of Days Gone was the zombie hordes. Massive in quantity, dozens upon dozens of zombies running and screaming towards you, clawing and climbing on top of each other. An adrenaline rush dream come true, right? But the game chooses to build them up in hours and hours of gameplay to only let you actually fight the hordes after pretty much the whole game has gone by. You only fight hordes at the end of a 35+ hour game. And I'm speaking narrative-wise. You can grind like crazy and go after them in the open world. But weirdly enough, I was okay with that. I enjoy playing these kinds of games in a more tactical way of playing. So I'll approach an enemy stealthy, try to take out as many as possible without alerting the others. And when hell would inevitably break loose, I would have a good shootout sequence. That gameplay loop was very rewarding to me. It had more tactical and slow-paced takedown in one moment, going to a Rambo, John Wick style action sequence in the other, to finish it all up in a biking riding send-off. It was perfectly balanced for me, and I was okay with that, to a point that when I actually got to fight the hordes, I was not even super excited to experience it, since I was taught by 30 hours of gameplay to have a totally different kind of experience, and not just guns blazing, running from 200 rabid zombies exploding shit like Rambo. But the biggest problem with this game is that it's super bloated.
God damn it, just do it already.
This game should be easily a 15 hours main story game, but the studio mindset probably was in a bigger hours better type of mindset when developing it. When I was halfway through the game, I was ready to wrap things up and be satisfied with the experience, only to realize there were roughly more than 15 hours to play in a completely new map. The bloatness is so real that there are missions that ask you to go to a point 2 kilometers away just to play a 30-second cutscene that accomplishes nothing narrative-wise, and that's it. Mission complete. So yeah, big pace problems. With all that being said, when I accepted what this game was and what it could offer me, I actually was able to have a really good time. Not because it was a masterpiece with a gripping story full of amazing writing and ups and downs and turns, no, but a decent mid-game with a decent story to get me through it and a very engaging gameplay loop. Looking back at the game, I'll remember it fondly, but I find it pretty fair the scores it has on Metacritic. The second game I decided to play in October was Callisto Protocol. I had my eyes on this game since the announcement, but the sort of cold reception made me wait to buy it. And what a surprise! I got it for free on my PSN Plus. Don't get me wrong, I felt very bad for the aftermath of the release of this game for the game studio, but to buy a full $70 game here in Brazil for a mid-game is out of the question. I'm broke! But yeah, I was super stoked to play a truly next-gen game. Although a big part of the reception and bad rap this game received was due to its rocky release full of game-breaking bugs and glitches, a lot of people bashed this game's gameplay for being too repetitive, and with mechanics that don't engage well enough throughout the game, and somewhat flawed gaming design. When I started to play the game, I was all in for a scary game like Dead Space. I was buying the premise and set to go on a horror-filled journey. As I was playing the game though, the main thing that I realized was that this horror game wasn't really scary. The main way to defeat monsters was melee combat. Even though there are guns in the game, you will lose all your ammo to kill just one regular zombie. And with that, I personally think it made the monsters much less scary, since I can beat the living shit out of the monsters. Not only that, but you're constantly close to one. That too takes away the creepy nature of horror and monsters. The anticipation is a key factor in horror, and when there's no anticipation, you're always close to them and we can just bonk them to death. The whole horror premise falls.
I'm gonna kick your ass!
With that being said, I find it engaging and fun enough to hold my attention to completion. The fact that this game is short might have been a good thing after all. The story had the potential of telling an amazing and creepy story, but I didn't feel much impact by it. I mean, it wasn't necessarily bad, just slightly above average. By the way, I felt very satisfied with the conclusion of the story. At the end of the day, it's a perfect 8 to 10 hour experience worth of my time, but only if you understand that it is not a fear-induced game and the combat mechanic can become repetitive over time. But accepting what Callisto Protocol is, not what it wanted to be, and not compared with Dead Space, it is a solid 6.5, 7 out of 10. So yeah, Metacritic scores were fair as well. A lot of the hate this game received I can perfectly understand given the context of this release at full $70. So yeah, overall, I have a positive experience with the game. Not really worth $70 to me though. I would go as high as $40 for it. And the third game I decided to play in October was Starfield. I played it a couple of hours after release in September, but it wasn't really clicking with me. At the start of my gameplay, I thought it was okay for the majority of time, but extremely boring and slow. And after having mild fun, I stopped playing for a couple of days and just didn't come back, until I decided to give it another chance and go for it. Starfield's reception wasn't the best, especially when you take into account that it's a Bethesda game, and usually they go super well. But that wasn't really the case with Starfield. The majority of opinions online were extremes, of either defending with your whole being or hating it like it just spanked your mother and ate your dad's ass. I have my personal gripes with this game. If you want more context on that, you can watch this video I posted when the game released. But well, have my opinions changed since then? No. I mean, kind of. I'll explain. I had to practically force myself to come back to Starfield. So I searched online ways to play it and actually enjoy it. So I found online that the best this game has to offer are the factions missions. So I once again booted up Starfield and set off to the stars. I mean, not real stars, since exploring in this game is almost non-existent. I played a couple of main story missions, finding kind of meh, the same way I felt in my first 13 hours of experience. So I decided to go full-on factions. And my god, the tales were true. The stories are actually very cool. They show the player the lore of this universe, with wars, different cultures, and whatnot. At one point I'm fighting an alien monster infestation mystery, on the other investigating crimes in a cowboy-like world, and in the other I'm undercover in the biggest pirate fleet in search of the One Piece. I mean, Crick's legacy treasure. Wink wink. And dudes, I racked up more than 20 hours just by doing these missions, and I felt super engaged and immersed. Again, as the premise of this video, understanding what Starfield is, which is not a regular Bethesda game with a big emphasis on open exploration, but accepting what Starfield actually is, which is a cool idea of a universe with cool lore and faction stories that wants you to go straight up to the missions and not naturally exploring the world. You'll have a blast for a dozen hours, and that makes it a pretty good game after all. There are sequences of ships dogfights in space that are very cool, and the regular Bethesda's first-person shooter and looter is pretty cool too. In the end, when I was okay with what Starfield could offer me in the best way, it delivered. I did have a good time. I still have more faction and main story to finish, but to be honest, I'm pretty happy with the game. Now, the reception this game received was fair? I still think it is. Everything I said on my Starfield video, I still believe. It is a shame what this game could be, and what Bethesda and Todd Howard promoted wasn't exactly what it was.
From the rocks at your feet to the mountains in the distance.
But overall, in 70 out of 100 and 8.3 out of 10 is definitely a fair score. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, and I'd love to know your opinions on these 3 games, so comment below. This is 2D, see you next time.